to have an exciting learning with loads of story. Over to you, Sandeep. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Gauri, and thanks, Harish, and very good evening to all of you. Wonderful to, I did not know about that there's such a group existing, so it's nice to know that. So maybe I'll just start with a little bit about my journey, how I became a storyteller. That's also a very interesting story. And then after that, I'll go a little bit around, business storytelling, how can you build your brand, and some of these areas, and then maybe we can have some questions. So actually, I worked for around 15, 16 years, and then I kind of did not know why I was doing what I was doing. So I quit my job 5 years back, just to figure out my purpose in life. And that's how my journey started. A couple of years I wasted trying to figure out. So after 2 years, I found out what I had to do. And one day I, started a firm and started to do okay. And then I just started to think about, what is it that I really love to do. So as a kid, I used to love to write, and it continued for many years. I used to write for my own self. So that's where I thought that maybe I should just start what I left as a child. Most of our lives, we have these beautiful things, dreams we have when we are a kid, but we kind of leave that over time. So that's where it all started. And one day I just thought, okay, let me just start writing. So I picked up a platform. I picked up Facebook first. It didn't work. Then I just went on to LinkedIn. Those days, LinkedIn was really coming up that time in terms of storytelling. So it was a right timing because there were very few storytellers on LinkedIn that time. And I started off roughly 3 years back. And I wrote a few stories. I thought, let me just share stories of what has happened in my life. And as I started to share those stories, I started to realize that a lot of people started to write to me and they started sharing their stories. Now, one day I got this very interesting story, which a lady wrote to me. She was in Kolkata. She was 40 years of age. She had a 10-year-old kid. And she wrote to me that she was being beaten up by her mother, physically beaten up. And her mother would beat her up in front of her child. And so that really shook me, and I started to realize that there's so much pain in this world. And then another girl wrote to me. She was around 18, 19 years of age, and she wrote to me and said that her brother is misbehaving with her all the time. And so she went to her parents and she complained, and the parents just told her to, that just keep quiet, this is absolutely wrong what you're saying. And he was obviously sexually harassing her as well. So as people started to write these stories to me, I started to realize that there's a relationship I'm building with the readers. They didn't know me, but they would read my stories, and a relationship started to get built. And so every day I would receive several stories, and then some of those stories I would just write stories around them. Some of them I would, keep them anonymous. So that's where the journey really started, and realized the power of storytelling. And the first few months I started to hit a couple of million. I was hitting 2 million views in the first 3 months, and then slowly it became more and more. And as it grew, I started to realize that it's a powerful medium to not just um, impact people, but also transform your own self and life. So writing is a very beautiful tool to heal yourself also. So let me start with a story which was many years back. So this is, let me also move the slides for you guys so you know where I am also. So today what we'll cover briefly will be around stories and how to build your brand, and also how to use LinkedIn as a platform. These are the basic things that I'm going to cover today. So let me just take you to Darjeeling, on the foothills of Darjeeling. I was 7, 8 years of age, and I really liked animals, and one of them, my favorite, were rabbits. So one day I went to my mom and told her that, can you get me some rabbits? So my dad was not very happy with this, but my mom convinced my dad, and they got me 4 rabbits. I put these rabbits, got a cage for them and put them in my terrace. And every day I started to feed them, carrots and grass. That's what rabbits eat. So initially I was doing that regularly, but then I started to think that, I'm being so selfish that these rabbits, they don't have a choice. They have to eat what I'm giving them. So one day I went to my mom and I I just requested her. I said, "Can you cook something different?" My mom was a very good cook. So she said, "Yeah, sure. What do you want me to cook?" So I thought for a while, and then I said, "Can you cook omelette for them?" So I didn't know that rabbits are vegetarian. So my mom looked at me and she smiled. She said, "Sure." Even she did not know. So she cooked omelette, and I took it and I went and kept it. There was in the cage. I just kept it at the center of the cage. So I then went off to play. And what happened is, after I came back after playing with my friend, I came back and I saw that the cage, the omelette is lying in the center, and two rabbits had moved to the left and two to the right. Poor fellows, they had no other option but to stay away as far as possible from what I had put. Now, I did not understand what was happening. So I went to my friend and I asked him what's happening here. So my friend said, "You are so foolish. The rabbits are vegetarians." So I said, "I did not know that. Now what do I do?" So he said, Sandeep, you go and now wash your sins. So I went and I took out everything from the cage. I washed the cage properly. I was trying to show them, look, I'm cleaning it all up. And then I went, after it all got cleaned up, I put the carrots and, grass over there. But these rabbits did not eat. So next day again, I went to my friend. I said, they're not eating. What do I do now? So they said, so he said, that, well, keep washing your sins till they start trusting you. So obviously they would see me every day getting the stuff, and they would look at me as if, and what I've got this time. And also the smell of the egg was still there. So I continued this for almost a week, and so they didn't eat anything for a week. And then after a week, they started eating. Now this incident happened, and obviously I started to grow up, and then I started to work. After many years, I worked in my first job, and I started to work. And then I got into a leadership role, and there I kind of encountered this very interesting situation where somebody talked to me about intent versus impact. So I was trying to be very straightforward and trying to do stuff completely out of very good intent. Now, but the impact was not very good. So I remembered this rabbit incident many years back, and I realized that my intent was very good when I was trying to give variety to these rabbits, and I was trying to give them interesting things to eat and all of that. But my impact was very bad. I mean, just imagine, the rabbits lost trust in me. They started doubting me. They didn't want to take anything that I was giving them. So I realized, once I was working in corporates, I also realized that sometimes some of the leaders and some people, you will find that their intent is good, but the impact is not. And that's a very, very critical part of leadership also. The second thing also I realized is there are some people and some instances where I found that the intent was very bad, but the impact was very good. So, for example, if a leader is focusing only on the top line and he doesn't bother too much about, and the business, let's say, is going through a very bad period. Now, in that case, and he actually lets the company come out of it, and he makes people work 18, 20 hours a day, and the company emerges. Uh, and now, because of that, what happens is that his intent is not. I mean, from that point of view, from an employee point of view, intent may not be good, but the impact is really good for the organization. So that's where I realized that the focus has to be around more around the impact than the intent. So this is something that I leave thought with you, and you can always reflect on this as well. And there's another very interesting aspect of this intent versus impact, which is basically the perception gap. So what you think within and what you're doing outside, there could be a gap, and that gap is actually the perception. And many years later, I had a manager, and he told me a very interesting thing. He said, Sandeep, perception is reality. And that really opened my eyes to understanding that, look, it's very, very important, the impact that you're doing. Now, if a plane is landing, and if the pilot is going to give you a soft landing, he really lands it really well, you don't come to know, impact is really good. But he gives you a hard landing, impact is really bad. It doesn't matter how the flight was till now. The last point is the landing of the flight. And the moment that is bad, you will be left with a lot of fear, or you may not be trusting the pilot. And so it's very important what you leave people with. Storytelling is also the same thing. What do you leave people with? So it's like you go and meet a few people, and then when you leave the room, what do you leave behind? It could be a fragrance, it could be something that you told them just stays with them. And that's the power of storytelling, whatever you say. So as a kid, you must have read about the Hansel Gretel story, and there you saw that Hansel was dropping those breadcrumbs, right? Now those breadcrumbs were actually crumbs not for him, but actually it was for the reader. Now when a person reads a story, you're basically planting those seeds or dropping those crumbs, so that you always remember as a reader, hey, somebody dropped those breadcrumbs. Now what will happen to those crumbs? So you already started taking the person on a journey where the person knows that you're going to come back one day. So that's what storytelling is. You actually take the reader or the viewer, the listener on a journey, and that's how you create stories out of it. Now uh, it's important also to understand the audience. In most of these things, you will find that any story that you're telling or any storytelling you're doing, the most important thing is the audience. So if the audience doesn't understand what you're trying to convey, you've lost the plot there. So you have to take the audience on a journey, and therefore the storytelling should not be from your point of view. It has to always be from the audience point of view. Now in English, we learn first, second, third person. Now first person is me, second person is you, third person is someone else. Now whenever you're telling stories, you have to understand which person you are telling the story in. So for example, if I talk about my failures, it's my first person story. I talked about the rabbit story, it's a first person story. But if I talk about somebody else's story, it becomes second or third person. Now why is this important? It's important because what is the viewer, reader, listener, what is he listening to you, and what kind of a story and the way you're telling it is going to impact him differently. So if I tell you my own story, it's going to impact you differently. If I tell you somebody else's story, it may impact you differently. So it's important. The first, second, third person is very important. The other bit of storytelling is past, present, future. Is basically which tense are you storytelling in. So for example, right now, if we create a story right now between us, that's the present story. And if I tell you story from the past, that's a past story. If I tell you something which may happen, it's a future story. So you've got to use both the tenses, and you've got to use a person: first person, second person, third person. Now the person is very important because for example, sometimes in first person is when you are in the heat of the moment. So for example, let's say you are in a situation where you have an argument with somebody. Now the moment you have an argument with somebody, you are actually in first person. You are angry, you are frustrated, and you lose your temper or anger. Now anger basically comes from the fact that you are not able to control. So there is helplessness, a feeling of helplessness emerges. And because of that, you get into, so first person can actually make you very weak also at times, because it makes you emotional and you flow with the emotions. At the same time, if I get into second person or third person, when it's like I'm in the aircraft, and I try to see myself from outside the aircraft. That's the third person view of things. How does your neighbor look at you? Now these are very important when you're doing storytelling, because it changes the context and the way in which you're telling the story, and therefore the impact also changes. Storytelling the other way is obviously if you are telling a story physically or an video, audio, those verbal and non-verbal cues, those are also very important. Now, I'll share with you a couple of models that I have developed on my own. This is obviously after writing 1,500 stories so far. And so the most important model that I follow for my storytelling is the triple E model, which is very simple. The one in the middle: entice, engage, educate. Now, when I told you the rabbit story, basically, rabbit was my entice. Entice is basically like a trailer, an item number in Bollywood that used to happen once upon a time. Entice is also the beginning, the starting of a story. It could be the subject headline or the subject line of an email. Essentially, you want the reader, viewer, listener to want to read your story or listen to your story. So that's the entice. The second part is the engage. Engage is once when the reader has come in. Now your guest has entered your house. Now you greeted the guest. That was your entice. Hello, hello, please, how are you? And you get him inside. Now you have to engage the guest in a conversation. And that's very important, because if the guest loses the plot, he may want to go away, or he may not, he may say, well, it's such a boring person I've come to. That's the engage part. Now, engage can happen in different ways again. But essentially, engage can start with some data, some facts in terms of a story. But then you start to engage the reader, viewer, listener through a script, through some plot, what happens. And that's the engage part of the story. Now, generally in stories, you'll always have characters, you'll have a script, and you'll also have a conflict. So every character, every story will have characters, and the characters will have some conflict. And the conflict basically builds up till you reach whatever, half time, interval time. And that's when, once it reaches the peak, that's when you want to know what's going to happen now. Most of the time, readers already know what's going to happen, but they want to go through that journey, that experience, because stories are about emotions. You want to go through that journey, that experience, and therefore they take you in that journey. And once you reach the peak of the climax, when the conflict is the maximum, after that, it slowly starts to come down. And there are several models around this, but that's basically that's how the engage part builds up. Now the last part is the of the story is educate. Now educate is basically, what you want the reader, viewer, or listener to take from the conversation or the story you've said. Now it can be stated explicitly, or it could be implicit also. So for example, let's say somebody is trying to sell something to you. Now if the person is trying to sell, he says, okay, this is what I'm trying to sell, why don't you buy it from me? I mean, that's a very explicit way of doing it. But sometimes in stories you may leave it. So for example, you may have seen certain movies where the ending is not explained properly. So that's how it is. So essentially you build the interest and you leave it to the reader or the viewer or the listener to pick up the end of the story and make his own interpretation. Interestingly, from every story, each person picks up different things. And therefore, when you let the reader or the viewer or the listener give him the power or her the power, then that person starts getting more and more engaged in the story. And the educate part also gets absorbed better. So it's like, after a story, I tell you lesson of the story. The moral of the story is, I mean, that was fine. But what if I ask the person, what do you think was the moral of the story? Now that's where I start to engage, but I am also educating. So that's the third part. Now, interestingly, when you look at, let's for a minute, let's think of salespeople who come and sell things to us. You'll find very interesting thing that they will start with educate first, then they engage, and then they entice. So basically, they do it the other way around. Essentially, entice should come first, then engage, then educate. Salespeople or even marketing people, they start with educate, where they'll tell you this product is amazing, this is how it will help you. Then they'll go to engage and say, you can also do this with the product. What do you think about it? Then the last they'll say, I'm going to give you a very heavy discount, buy one, get one free. That's the entice. So therefore, you'll see most salespeople are not able to sell well because they do it just the other way around. Now, similar thing works in relationships. Let's for a minute think of a relationship between a boy and a girl. Let's say there's a guy and there is a girl and they're having a relationship. Now, if this lady, let's say suppose she keeps calling this guy all the time, basically she wants to make a relationship, or she's quite interested in this person. And now what the person what happens to the guy is he starts getting vibes. Look, you know she's already very interested in me, and therefore it's fine. I mean, there's not much I need to do. And he gets disinterested by the entice in the other thing. So now a part of the entice is also the whole bit around where I am not readily available. you know so that could be an entice. The moment I'm readily available for any relationship, whether it is for a boyfriend or girlfriend, even husband wife, you'll find that the whole bit entice bit goes away. I mean, most relationships die down because the entice is missing. Similarly, at workplace also you'll find that entice is also very important. How do you entice the other person into a conversation? How do you engage, and how do you educate? So in every conversation, in every relationship, you'll find this framework works beautifully, and you can actually build it around. So scarcity, for example, creates an entice. Okay, only 5 seats remaining. And or 1 seat remaining. So if I tell you, okay, I'm doing a workshop and it's tomorrow and I have only 1 seat remaining, you'll be more excited towards it than when if I say, okay, I have 20 seats available. So that's the whole bit around scarcity that you create. The other bit is on relationships, as I was saying. Uh, if people are insecure in relationships, that's the entice. They keep remaining engaged because you're insecure, because you feel you're fearful that you lose that person. And that's a very interesting aspect of relationships. And sometimes insecurity keeps relationships alive. So anyways, let's move on to the next framework, which is really the CDE framework, which is content, delivery, and evidence. Now, this is a very interesting framework because it talks about typically how does a story get evolved. There has to be some script, the plot, the character, the setting, and there has to be an ending to a story. The second part is the delivery bit. How? So the content is the what and delivery is the how. So what is the mode? So is it video? Is it audio? Is it written? So for example, I only write text stories. I don't do video stories much. I mean, this is obviously a video storytelling session, but essentially I do only text stories. I don't put any images. Instagram is a platform where you do image storytelling. You basically do through pictures. And similarly, there are other platforms which will do different stuff. They use different mediums. So the delivery is the how. Now, in the delivery, there are two very important aspects. One part is the communication. How do you communicate the story effectively? Do you engage the audience well enough? The second part is the intent versus impact, which we just discussed, the rabbit story. Basically, if your intent and impact has a gap, then obviously the story is not going to be as impactful. So the how is very important. The last part, which is very crucial factor today, is evidence. So in the social media world, there is a lot of thing around social proof. Social proof means if if 10 friends of mine say this is really good, you know, let's say you're planning to buy a mobile, you go and ask 10 friends, they all said they recommend a particular brand. More often than not, you'll go with that brand. Now, social proof basically is also viral on viral posts. For example, you must have seen on LinkedIn or on Facebook or other platforms. You must have seen a lot of viral posts coming through. Now, it's very interesting to see that in a viral post, you'll find thousands, hundreds of comments, and everybody's written everything around those comments. But yet, people will come and they will comment on that post, even if the comment has already been made or made several times. Now, why does this happen? This happens because, again, you want to be where the action is. You don't want to be left out. The fear of missing out. You want to be where really everybody is and everybody's commented, how could I miss out on this opportunity? You also want to be seen where everybody is being seen. So there's a lot of psychology also that goes around in storytelling. You have to play towards this, you have to understand the psyche of the readers, the viewers, the listeners, and you have to play to the gallery. You have to play to the crowd. What does the crowd want from me? Now, storytelling, so the social proof is very important because it's about other people saying this is good. Now, our Indian society is also, I mean, you must have observed it. It's wired around what will other people say. So when I became an entrepreneur, my first couple of years, and then I became a storyteller, I started writing. And people used to come to my house or from outside, they would tell, what are you doing? You sit at home the whole day, you write, what do you do? And, my own family started telling me that, look, what are you doing? You're wasting your time. Why would you do such a thing like this? So what people say becomes very important in the Indian society. What will others think of me? Will they laugh at me? So there is this whole fear of being ridiculed, which is also coming from childhood. So for example, in my childhood, I was always told that don't do this, this is wrong, you will fail here, you're doing the wrong thing. So all that negativity that was fed to me during childhood just became dinosaurs when I grew up. And that really started to play in my mind. So that's very important. So the whole bit around the people, society is very important on the evidence part of it. The last part of it, the last part of it on evidence is really the why, which is basically around authenticity. Now, let's say I'm telling you my story and you don't believe my story, then I've lost my audience. So when you're telling a story, you have to be authentic. So, for example, if I tell you that I've gone through depression 2-3 times in my life, and one of which, I had to actually go to a doctor and I took pills, and it was very tough for me, and I don't know, somehow I survived that. Now, I've told you my story. Now, if you don't believe it, then I've lost the plot. But if you believe it, then you kind of, you're interested to know me more. You're interested to know the story more. So that's very important when we are doing storytelling, the evidence part of it. Okay. I'm not going to go to the other framework. That's a 5-factor model. I won't get into it too much, but basically that model is really around how do you connect to people. You basically need to invoke emotions in people. And the second part is how do people relate to you and how do you relate to yourself. Now, so there are two parts when you're dealing. Can everybody mute yourselves? So there are two parts to, you know, when we are doing something in this world, there is a relationship I have with myself. That's the first step. The second step is the relationship I have with the world. Now, if don't have a good relationship with my own self, for example, I don't know my own insecurities, my own fears. If I'm living every day with fear, I have a lot of insecurities and doubts in my life, then obviously this will play out with my relationship with the world. So, for example, I was coaching someone the other day, and this lady, she had lost her father when she was 8 years of age. Now, a father, for example, in somebody's life is all about security. Mother is is a symbol of love. Now, this lady, as she started to work and she grew up, she started to become very insecure at workplace because she never received security during her childhood. Now, that's how these things, play out. So basically, my relationship with myself is the first part. If I don't know about my own self, how can I build the relationship with the world? Now, a lot of people don't do this self work, but this is very important. Specifically in storytelling, I should know my own self very well. Otherwise, how can I even tell a story? So this is one part of stories. I'll move forward now. Um, let me take a let me take a pause and just go through the whole bit around personal branding now. Now, let's say suppose I want to build my brand in this world. Now, why is it important? It's important because yes, some people will say, why do you want people to know you? You know, but at the end of the day, if you want to create any impact to society, you will have to build a brand for yourself. If you want to do anything meaningful, purposeful, people should know you. Now, today, when I write stories, I know that I have millions of people reading my stories. So basically, the brand has already gotten built. But how do you build the brand? So one of the important part of building a brand is to know your what, your why. Why are you doing? Who are you? Why are you doing it? What do you want to do? What do you like to do? What do you love to do? So I think an important part of it is that you start to introspect and find out more about yourself. Because if you want to create a brand of yourself, then you should know what is this brand about. Why should people buy this brand? What is it that they should come to you for? That's a very important part of it. And I have a very simple framework I have designed for this. It's called the acronym brand. So brand is bring a new dimension. What this means is very simply that what is unique about you. So new dimension is uniqueness. Each person in this world has got certain uniqueness. So for example, my uniqueness, my unique gift is my ability to be able to tell a story. That's my uniqueness. Now similarly, everybody has some unique ability. Now, a lot of people don't know their ability, which is unique. There are others who don't work on it. So, for example, I used to love to write, but I stopped writing, or I didn't pay much attention to it. And then suddenly one day I started writing. As I wrote for a few years, I became better, and I became better and better. So it's important that you look at the uniqueness of a person and you focus your brand around that. So brand cannot be built on, for example, you say, okay, I want to become the world's best leader. Now you can't build a brand just like that. First of all, you have to go and walk the talk, right? You have to go out there and you do something which inspires somebody. Now, if let's say I'm going to tell everybody, look, I'm a great leader. The first question will be somebody else will ask, okay, tell me what is the one great thing you have done in your life? Have you transformed yourself before you want to transform somebody else? So that's a very, very basic question. For example, coach. I mean, you must have seen thousands and hundreds of coaches today. I was, searching on LinkedIn and I found 100,000 coaches on LinkedIn. Now, these coaches, maybe they have started, and a lot of them say that, look, I'm doing it for my passion and this is what I want to do. But the question is, have they been able to change themselves? If they haven't, then they can't coach anybody. So it's very important that you find that uniqueness in you and then you start to really build on it. Because if I have a gift, how do I find that gift? Number one. Number two, how do I build on it? Now, how do you find the gift? It's very simple. You can start with something you're good at or something you love to do. And then you start building in it by practicing it every single day. So for example, I write only one story a day. I mean, now in the lockdown I've increased it, but I've been just writing one story a day for the last 3 years. So every day I just make sure one story is written. So for me, that's all that is there, and that's how I built my brand. Very small things. So small things matter, and you pick up those small things and you build on it. Now, I'll talk a little bit about dots. So dots is a very interesting framework that I have again developed for myself. Do one thing surely. Now, we all think there's a lot of competition in this world, but I'll share with you, and I've done this experiment with almost, I would say, 20, 30,000 people now. I've been asking this question at various talks, conferences, and I've asked people, can you do one thing surely for an hour? So basically, it means, let's say, suppose you like to read. So can you do reading for an hour without any interruption? The next level is, can you do one thing surely for a day? And a lot of people here start thinking, oh, but I have to do this. I have my mobile, some calls, work. So again, now, so that there's distraction that comes in. The third level is, can you do one thing for a week? A lot of people are able to get to this point. But after that comes the next point where most people drop off, whether you're building your brand or you're trying to develop your gift. Can you do one thing for a month? 90% of the people, 99% of the people can't reach here. The last one is, can you do one thing for a year? And therefore, actually, and I've done this experiment across schools, colleges, corporates, most people don't pursue their passion, what they believe in, because they're scared they'll miss out on opportunities. And therefore, they're not able to build on their brand. They're not able to build that uniqueness out. So doing one thing for a year and then obviously carrying it on, that's really how you build the brand. So it's every single day you need to do that thing. It's like brushing your teeth. You got to do it every single day, and that's how you build your brand. Now, there's another important part, that while you're building a brand, how do you transform your brand? So, for example, let's say when you get up in the morning, this was a few years back, and after I started reflecting on my own self, I realized I used to go to brush my teeth in the same way, wear my slippers in a particular fashion. I would move the brush up and down in a very exactly the same fashion. I would also put the paste in the same fashion. I was basically programmed, and I was operating out of a program. And then I realized I need to change the program, because everything, my behaviors, my responses, my reactions, everything was programmed. So there was no freshness that I was bringing to the table, and I couldn't even innovate. And therefore, you see in corporates, there's a lot of programs around innovation, creativity. Actually, what we've done is, through corporates, what we do is we first kill the creativity and then we expect people to become creative. So that's very important, that you start to transform yourself. Once you start to transform yourself, you remove those programs, then you start becoming better in terms of whatever new you want to try. And that's how you can build a brand, bring new things, freshness to whatever you're doing. Now, the three mistakes that people do when they're building the brand, basically the first one is, it could be called underselling or overselling. So there's some people who undersell and there's some people who oversell. Some people will say more, but they can't do as much. But there's some people will not say much because they're scared or they're introverts, and they will sell less. Now you need to find that fine line for yourself. Do you want to sell more? Do you want to sell less? Where is that line? The second part of the mistake is walking the talk. A lot of people will say, I do this, I do that, but when it comes to themselves, they can't walk the talk. For example, if I say I'm disciplined in everything in my life, but I actually can't, do other things very well, and I'm always, let's say, I'm always making mistakes in certain areas or not consistent, then I'm not walking the talk. So, for example, I have a time when I publish my posts every day between 7:30 to 8:30 a.m. I generally publish my story. Now, I'd written a post once where I said that, look, this is my time. I publish my stories, and that story which I had written was published between 7:30 to 8:30, and there is a person who came and commented, I can see that you're walking the talk. There was another instance where somebody came and looked at my LinkedIn profile, and he said, and I had written this post around that most of the headings in LinkedIn profiles, they write X, X Wipro, X TCS, or X Flipkart, and all of that. I said this X should not be written. And on my headline, I had written, number of LinkedIn views. So then somebody commented and said that the LinkedIn views that you're writing were from the past. So why are you putting things of the past as well? So I quickly removed that. And then he said, well, you're walking the talk. So it's important that you walk the talk. The last part, which is very difficult to do, is how much effort do you put into build your brand? So every single day, can you wake up every day in the morning and say, I'm going to build my brand, I'm going to put in that effort? So that's a very important part of it. Okay, let me move forward. I think a lot of you know what LinkedIn does, and it's a very powerful medium. So I'll just tell you how we use LinkedIn. Through LinkedIn, I've helped several people in several ways, but most importantly, for example, in today's age, for example, if you can help somebody if he's going through a tough period in his life, that's one way of doing it. But the other bit is that you can also help connect other people together, the right people. So you can become a broker of relationships. So you don't need to do anything for yourself only. You can help other people and connect them. So networking is all about giving, and that's basically my formula. So I've put in 10,000 hours on this platform, and basically I've done one thing, is just to give. And that's how the brand got built. And I never knew that this could also help us get business and other things could happen. But then the important part is, how do you use this platform, how do you give? So those who give, that's how the whole power of the brand gets unlocked. That's how you create your brand, because people want to come to you, because if they're stuck somewhere, they'll come to you. So that is one part. How do you build your personal brand? And there's a lot of stuff here, and I've spoken a few other things before, but giving is very important. A lot of people abuse the network. So for example, people just say, okay, give me a job, or I want a job. Basically those are short-term transactional. Can you build long-term relationships? So that's very, very important to build your brand. Okay, I kind of covered a lot of ground here, and I'll take a pause. Love to, Harish and others, if there are any questions you may want to ask me. I think we have good time, but please feel free to ask me any question. It could be around my journey, it could be around building the brand, it could be around networking, it could be around LinkedIn, or about storytelling, whatever you'd want to ask.
If you would like to ask questions, just raise the hand. Gauri will monitor it.
Sorry, who's that?
Gauri will be monitoring. So anyone who has got the question, just raise your hand.
Yeah, and you can also ask on audio or video, whatever is comfortable.
Yeah, directly. So one can connect directly.
Yes.
Anyone?
Sandeep,
Hello.
this is
Yes.
Dr. Aparna Sethi, and it's
Yes.
like dream come true. You were in Gurgaon. I wanted to attend, but I could not attend. Today I am here to connect with you. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I also write, I follow your footsteps and write a lot of stories. Visibility and everything goes quite, good. Around 1,600 likes I get. But sometimes, our stories get trolled. Like
Yeah.
people don't believe in certain things. Like I talk about, write more about women, but many people don't believe that there is no inequality. What you write is something not happening. So they troll, and emotionally it is really, uh, it hampers your mental peace. So what are the tips you would like to share to, you know, um, overcome this particular trolling problem?
Very good question, Aparna and Dr. Aparna and Dr. Aparna, right?
You can call me Aparna, no problem.
Okay, no worries. So I think I'll just share with you. So I started writing on LinkedIn in 2017, and in the first 3 months I was hitting several million views. 2018 came, and I was calculating that I should become the LinkedIn top voice, because my views were almost, I was hitting 50 million views a year, and I wanted that top voice very badly. And interestingly, it did not happen that year. And basically, LinkedIn top voice is not there's no nomination process. It's LinkedIn decides and LinkedIn comes out, because I done all the analysis around. Okay, I'm trending on this. My views are the maximum, so I should get it and all of that, and I didn't get it. So the next year again, I started writing, and I kind of forgot, and I said, okay, why do I need it? I'm already getting so many views, and why do I need to have a title or a tag? So 2018, this was around April, May, when I wrote certain posts which went super viral. So when I say super viral, I'm talking about 2 million views. So my best post has been 2 million views. That's around 20 lakh people viewing. And those posts went viral because people started to troll me. Because suddenly people started to question, how is this person who's come from nowhere, he has no background, he has no standing, because I was basically a failure, a failed entrepreneur, and who's been failing for the last 2 years. I have no such titles to prove. I had titles at the back, but that's gone now. I'm nothing. And now how is this person doing well? So obviously people started to, some people do it because, they feel that, okay, why is this person going up? Then that's the whole crab mentality we have, right? In India specifically, we have more, but it's not just in India, outside also it happens. And so almost for 2-3 months, I was trolled like crazy, so much so that, people started really sending me hate messages. And it was really, really traumatic for me because I was writing for the love and joy of writing. And suddenly now I have to deal with these people. So, and this happened 2019, sorry, it was in 2019. And 2019, so the LinkedIn Top Voice comes out in November. And so almost from April, May till November, I was like trolled miserably. And every day I would write the post, and then slowly I started to, I started to think about, why am I getting so bothered about? Earlier I used to delete those trolls. I used to also think, what is there? I used to block those people. But then I realized that, why am I doing it? What is my need? My need is basically my whole existence is being questioned, right? That, okay, my thought process is wrong. People are raising fingers at me. So what's my big problem about that? And then slowly I started to evolve from inside, where I started realizing, hey, it's okay if somebody has to troll. And then I started to, deal with it. But after I got trolled for almost 4 months, I got the LinkedIn Top Voice Award. And that was really, I realized that there is always good that happens in the bad also. I must also share with you, this year, I was trolled miserably for a post that I wrote around the Tirupati temple. And you won't believe it, somebody actually went and did a police complaint against me. And trolling can go to that extent also. I would say, just avoid what is happening. Let people say or do whatever they are doing. It is also a growth for you. Why are you troubled by what other people are saying? If somebody is raising a finger on you, basically he's questioning your security. And if you are feeling insecure about it, you need to work on yourself. So I think that's it. And in terms of, so I kind of now, give a nice response. Sometimes you can give, and what I started to realize is, if you give a good response to the person who's trolling you, you'll find that you'll start to change. Now, there is also a reason why people troll. People troll because they are angry, they are upset, and they have a very simple platform where they can go and vent out their frustration. And for some people, this is, this is the best outlet. That there is Aparna who's written this article. I just have to go and say some crap to her, and I'll feel good about it. So some people do it for this whole, because they are frustrated in their lives. Now, I'll also share with you that I've been getting hundreds and thousands of messages, and everybody in this world is going through a lot of tough times. And this is not just now, but it was even before COVID. So actually, people are going through a lot of tough times, and they don't know how to manage their own lives. People are going through depression, sexual abuse, harassment, divorces. So it is just so much pain in this world. For them, this is an outlet. So I would say, just don't ignore. Just think that, oh, poor guy, he must be going through so much of shit to write this. And basically be kind to that person and try and say, okay, I hope so. I started responding to some people. I hope, in case you're going through a tough period in life, let me know, I can help. So I think that's the way I would respond to it. And yes, sometimes you will get questioned, sometimes, but the more you'll get into these arguments, I've realized is the arguments don't lead anywhere. So you'd better just stay away from them. Sorry, long answer.
Avoid arguments, but sometimes, I immediately post a new post. So that is how I'm trying.
So that's because you are feeling that's your response to it. So stay with the discomfort. See, growth and transformation happens only when you stay with the discomfort. So if somebody is trolled with 100,000, so what I do is I just close LinkedIn then. I'm active, I'm 10 hours, 12, 15 hours on that platform, but I close LinkedIn and I just go off. And I say, okay, can I live with it that there are people who don't like me? Basically, it's my insecurity, right? That I want everybody in this world to like me. Why? So good. Any other questions?
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
Akshay, you can
Yeah, hello.
unmute and ask your question.
Yes.
Yeah, sir, I have one question.
Yes.
Actually, I want to write something, but I not be able to articulate my thoughts and ideas. So, what should I do, and how I can start something for writing these things?
So the simplest thing is, I mean, these days pen and pencils don't work. So use your phone, right? Start writing small things. Write a line. Write what is going on inside your head. What are you thinking all the time? What are your thoughts about? So start with that. And slowly you will start to get clarity because there's a lot happening inside our head. You know, the head has, so we have two voices in our head. One voice keeps telling us that bad is going to happen. Another voice keeps telling us good is going to happen. Now, this all keeps going on inside our head, our fears and all of that. And put those down on your phone, right? That's what I do. And then slowly you'll reach a state where there'll be nothing left inside. And when there's nothing left inside, you reach a state of thoughtlessness, you know, in the sense that you don't have a thought. And a blank mind can create. So there is a very interesting concept about creation versus consumption, which I'll talk to you about. So in this world, most people are consuming everything. You're consuming content, you're consuming materialism, you're consuming goods, you're consuming stuff. But there are very few people who are creating. So the person who creates, he's not going to be consuming. He gets away from it. So you'll see, for example, Bill Gates and all these entrepreneurs, you'll see they wear those simple t-shirts all the time because they don't want to waste their time in consumption. They are thinking about creation. How can I create something in this world? So the creation mindset and the consumption mindset are two very different things. So right now, you see, even when you have a lot of thoughts in your head, you are actually being consumed by the thoughts. So either you are consuming the thoughts or the thoughts are consuming you. So you have to move from that. So for that, simple thing to do is put down what you think. And you can move from consumption to the creation mindset. I hope that answers.
Yes, true. Thank you so much, sir, for that.
Anybody else?
Rajat, please unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, hello, sir. My question was, I used to write in around 2012 or 13. I used to write for 1 year in the blog. I am also having a blog on the internet. So after that, I left the writing because there was no thought coming from my side, and no new idea was coming over there. So I stopped the writing, but now I wanted to start my writing, but there is no any particular thought is coming. Apart from that, also I am having a very less vocabulary in English also. So I'm good writing in English also and Gujarati also, but I do not have any good vocabulary in English. So how can we improve our vocabulary as well as how can we get more and more ideas from outside world?
Good question. Many years back, I had met this person who used to write. I met him and he said, I want to become a writer. And so I asked him, what do you write? And he told me that he writes only in Hindi. So I told him, why don't you start to write in Hindi on LinkedIn? And he went and he started doing that. And it was very interesting. He went viral. So, you can start writing in Gujarati. Nobody stops you. Why do you have to do what other people are doing? There is no Gujarati writer on the platform today. Go ahead and start writing in Gujarati. You will have an audience, a global audience of Gujaratis will try to even read you. And there is such a big community. So I think you should not do what other people are doing. You have to do what nobody else is doing, right? And what other people are not doing, they are fearful, they are scared. That's what you need to do, because most of the people are all scared. And therefore they don't go beyond. They are scared. Okay, somebody will say something to me. They will laugh at me. That's all that is there. And I used to feel the same thing when I started writing. Every day I used to feel, oh God, this guy said this about me. He's saying this about me. And they're all going to laugh at me. So initially when I started writing, you'll be surprised. My own family used to tell me that, what crap do you write? So you just need to do what you feel like doing, and you need to go beyond. And then continue doing. Do one thing surely every single day, every single, you just have to keep doing that. And most people don't do that, and therefore they don't achieve what they want. I hope that helps, Rajat.
Yeah. So what reference we can take from outside, like newspaper or magazine or some books? If you
You can. So what I do, for example, so in this lockdown, what I did was, and I'll tell you a very interesting thing. In the lockdown, a lot of people started writing and I had to do better. So what I did is I started writing 2 posts a day. So last 107 days, I've written 2 posts a day. So one of the stories I was covering was the entire lockdown thing. Okay, what's happening? So I would research from different places, and then I would give references if required. and write the article. So you can definitely do that, quote the references that you're giving on this platform. A lot of people do that. They just pick up news. Nowadays, any news that will come in social media will come on LinkedIn also. People just quickly go and put it there. So yeah, you can do that. But a lot of people are doing this. So you have to do something that other people are not doing. So unique dimension, that's the unique dimension you need to bring to the table. Good. Anybody else?
Shakir, please unmute and ask your question. Shakir,
Yeah.
you're not audible.
Good evening, sir. This is Shakir.
Yeah, Shakir.
Hello. Now
Yes, yes, go ahead.
hello. Now it's audible.
Yeah,
Yes,
go ahead.
Shakir, please go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening, all. Sir, my question is, we are living in India. India is a democratic country. So if anybody who is going to write any of the blog, especially on LinkedIn, so it's a completely based on the individual perception, his experience, his knowledge, his background, his education. Correct, sir? So I think we should ready for the criticism also, because if we are getting the response from the opposite side, there's the criticism. So in any of the article, okay, if people are not agree because they have the different opinion, or somebody is giving some suggestion, and at the end of the day, if I also realize that definitely something is missed out in my article, I should edit. Or if at the end of the day I convinced, so definitely I have to remove my article and fresh the upload the fresh one also. So in this regard, I have to go through the there are a lot of means fighting for myself as the opposition people, opposite people. So in this regard, how I can balance my emotion and my thought process? This is my question.
See, I think, like, for example, I write now to start conversations. So
Yeah.
if you look at my post, you'll find that the comments are richer than the post. People come for the comments. So it's like when you go to the shop, you get a toffee, right? When you were kids, we used to somebody would give us a toffee. So the toffee is really the comments, and people come for that. So I would say, try to keep your stance very neutral and open, where you put a point across, and then you can, invite people to talk about it, ask them what do they think. So now, if you get very attached to your post, what you have written, basically it means that it comes to, basically it's becoming your ego issue, where you are very attached to what you have written. So you see, once you create, like God has created so many people, right? Now he is not attached and saying, no, I'm not going to let you go out, right? He's just saying, okay, go. It's like some parents will never give independence to kids, whereas some parents will say, hey, you just go out to the world, do what you feel like. So you need to also put your thought out there and let it go. You can't hold on to your thought so much that it becomes a hindrance for you. And that is where growth also happens, where you are actually inviting. So I would say work on that part where you're actually you are actually starting conversations. This has to be a conversation starter. It can't be a judgment on something, right? Because every issue will have to, for example, I wrote some posts in the beginning of lockdown. I said the government has done the worst thing by doing this lockdown. It is foolish because at the end of the day, so many cases will still pile up when you open it up. And a lot of people trolled me on that. And this was in the first few days of lockdown. They said, you don't know anything. You're so stupid. And, it was like mayhem. And one or two posts, it was so bad that people started to, say this is horrible. And so it was really, really bad. Later on, after 1 month, I put the same post. It did very well. Because after 1 month, everybody realized that, after lockdown will open, everything is going to happen the same way. The number of cases, and India has come to the third position now on cases. So the timing of the post is also very important. If I say it just before, it's like saying that, okay, the child should be born before the time, so you need to wait for that time to arrive also, because there has to be a perfect time for everything. Now that post was very wrong, but after now, if I tell you, you will say, yeah, I think government tried, and also the middle class, interestingly, the middle class is the one who's been, locked down. You have to stay inside your house. The middle class has been really attacked in that way that you have to stay. And they were very frustrated. All of us were very frustrated. We are the middle class of the country, and why are we asked to now stay as a prisoner inside our houses and all of that? And suddenly, if somebody puts a post, hey, what you were doing for the last 90 days was stupidity. You are going to be so angry at that person because you are saying that what I did for 190 days, and I'm such an intelligent person, we are so educated, we're the middle class of the society, and suddenly you are telling me that I wasted my time for 100 days. Well, you're going to be angry. So I think that's very important. And I put this post, by the way, and it was like crazily, and I got a lot of hate posts and all of that. But that's the fun of this, right? The platform is so beautiful that you will get popularity, but you'll also get brickbats. It's like any celebrity. You must have seen anybody who becomes famous. This problem happens. Now, I'll also share with you that sometimes these things go really wrong also. It's not, and sometimes you can help. So I'll tell you, I started this whole thing around writing stories about people who were losing their jobs, and I helped several people through my posts find jobs. Now, that was amazing because I'm using this medium to really help other people. And I remember I helped a guy who was paralyzed find a job, and his whole family was dependent on him, and his life completely changed after that. So I think we should know the power of this platform, and as Spider-Man says, with great power comes great responsibility, or Uncle Ben says. So you should kind of use that, but don't get so attached to what you're writing.
Correct, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Yes.
Sandeep, we have a question for you.
Yes.
Shruti wants to understand how are you so consistent with your post? For her, it's like sometimes writing thrice a day, and at times she goes without post for weeks.
Right. So see, I was a very inconsistent person in my life. I've never done anything consistently. I used to lose focus in 1 minute. So I have a very restless mind, and I couldn't do anything well enough in my life. I was a complete. I would do things. I did reasonably okay, but I wouldn't be able to get to the top of like becoming really good at what I was doing, like becoming amazing. And the only reason was that I was not consistent. So when I started to write, I think what really changed for me was I used to enjoy writing. So I started writing 1 hour a day, and I slowly ramped it up. And in 3 months' time, I was writing 18 hours a day. I was just loving the whole process of writing. I was not bothered about what is happening. After 3 months, I realized, oh, my posts have all gone viral, and something's changed in my life. But I really enjoyed the process of writing. So for me, writing is like when I get up in the morning. So by the way, I write at 3 in the morning. I get up at 3 in the morning, and I write from 3 to 8 o'clock. I write, and then I go for my breakfast, and then I sometimes I don't even brush my teeth also. So for me, that's the most beautiful moment of my life. When I get up, it's like me and my own world, and I can create anything. So it gives me a beautiful high. It also makes me very joyful of that process of creation. And at the end of it, the thing is that I'm able to impact so many lives with it. So it changes me, and then it changes everybody. So I think you've got to enjoy what you're doing. Otherwise, there's no point. You can't force yourself. A lot of people do this 21-day challenge, 30-day challenge. All that is, I would say, just forcing yourself to do something which you don't even love to do. Now, if you're not enjoying it, and most of the people are not consistent, because it also comes over time. So for example, after I did my first 100 days of writing, after that, it just became part of my life. So if you cannot push till the 100 days, you won't be able to get to that next level. And it is very tough. So I'll tell you, I've written 1,500 posts, and nobody on LinkedIn has written so many posts. In India, for sure. Globally, there may be very, very few people. And when I'm saying posts, I'm talking about stories with proper content that I'm creating without copy pasting. So by the way, I don't tag anybody. I've never tagged anybody. I don't copy paste from anywhere.
Yeah, there was a post on not tagging.
Yeah. So yeah. So I don't tag. I don't increase my views in any way. So I don't use any mechanism to do that. Basically, it's just pure bliss. It's joy for me. It's like a kid with a toy. The kid loves the toy, and he will keep playing with the toy till the toy breaks. And the parent will keep saying, why are you playing with this stupid toy all the time? But that's what obsession is, and that's what consistency is. I think that's what it is. So yeah, I have figured out that zone. I'm able to shut out the world also. So for example, I used to, before the COVID happened, I used to travel a lot. So I used to write on platforms. So I was sitting in Delhi railway station platform, and I have to write my post. So I'm going to write it with all the noise around. I can shut everything up, and it's beautiful, and it takes you to a different dimension. It's also meditation. In some ways, writing is meditation.
So Shruti is also in top LinkedIn top 25, and it looks like inconsistency also works. So Shruti, can we have you and listen from you what you did despite inconsistency to be in top 25? Shruti, Shruti, am I audible? Okay, seeing she's not able to hear us.
Yeah.
Great. So there's one more question for you, Sandeep. How do you ensure that your post does not affect sentiments of people? I don't think you mind that. You just explained that.
Yeah, I think the one post that did very bad was the Tirupati post that I wrote. Basically,
Yeah.
I wrote a story around how the laborers, the workers, sanitation workers in the Tirupati temple, were fired. Contract was not renewed, and they have millions of dollars lying in gold and in their bank accounts. And I felt very bad about what had happened because of the COVID. They actually stopped their salary for almost a month, and I wrote this post, and and people got very offended. Um, After I think so 10 days, I actually pulled that post down after 7 or 10 days. Um, but sometimes I write from my heart, so it could offend people, and I try to keep it neutral. But I think if there is a thought that you want to put out there, you should put it out there, right? Because somebody has to do that. So my job as a LinkedIn top voice is also that I need to voice things which other people are not thinking about. So my job is that. So if there is a trade-off between a worker whose family is now not having money or food to eat, and there are laddus being dropped on the floor, which could have fed them. So I would want to talk about this. Now, yes, there are repercussions, and we should be prepared for them. But I'm not very good at being diplomatic. So I'm learning that. So I don't write as many controversial things now, because the moment I put a controversial post, also people start saying, hey, I'm doing it for views and likes. But I'm not doing it for that,
Yeah.
because frankly, I don't need to do that. I mean, anything I write will do well because of the number of followers, right? So now you have a reader base, the readers are reading, and it will always do well. But I think, yeah, one should not do that. I agree that, and I'm learning as a human being also not to hurt people's sentiments. So that was one mistake I did, and I I don't repent it, because I think that was right, and somebody actually went to the police station and filed an FIR. So that is how, and he raised this issue that sentiments were being hurt. So yeah.
Okay. And how did you come out of it? I mean, FIR and
Yeah, so God helps.
okay. So Tirupati God didn't mind what you wrote.
So yeah, I think that it got solved on its own. I didn't do anything. I just
Okay.
uh, I just prayed.
But that shows you are a celebrity.
Yeah, there is a price you pay for that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I think Bhavan would have got his answer, and it relates with what you always say, that you fail more, you succeed more finally, and that's how it works. So if we have Shruti back and we can hear from her, no. Harish sir, there are no questions left, or nobody is raising hands.
Okay, so it was a great learning
Can I
story.
can I just end with a story for all of you?
Sure, sure.
Okay,
Yes.
so this is a very interesting story because my favorite story. So in a village many years back, there was a very holy saint who had an answer to all the questions. So basically, anybody would go to him with a question, he had an answer to that question. And so his popularity started to grow. And in his village, he became the most famous person. Then slowly other villages also started to learn about this person, and they all started to come to him to ask questions. And he would give a solution to everybody, and he was always right. He never failed in anything that he did. There was a boy in one of the villages who became jealous of this holy man. So he thought of a plan to get the holy man's reputation down. So he caught a sparrow in his hands and went to the holy man. So he thought of an idea, and he hid the sparrow behind his back in the hand, and he entered the place where the holy man was in a gathering. So this holy man was talking about things, and suddenly this young boy entered and said, "Oh, holy man, you have answers to all questions. I have a question for you." So the moment he questioned authority, there was pin drop silence. And in the silence, the holy man smiled at him and said, "Sure, please go ahead." So the boy said, "So what do I have in my hands behind my back?" So he's got the sparrow in his hands and behind his back, and nobody can see it. There was pin drop silence. The holy man closed his eyes, concentrated, and he could hear the ruffle of the feathers and the squeak of the sparrow. And quickly he opened his eyes, he smiled and said, "You have a sparrow in your hands, my boy." So this boy was really upset, but he'd come ready with a plan B. So he said, "Oh, holy man, you are very intelligent, but now this question is very tough. Tell me, is the sparrow dead or alive?" So there was pin drop silence, and the holy man smiled at him, looked at him. So this boy had thought of a plan. The moment the holy man will say this sparrow is dead, he will release the sparrow in the air. And if he said the sparrow is alive, he will crush the sparrow. So either ways, he would win. So the holy man looked at him, smiled, and said, "My son, it's in your hands." Thank you.
Amazing story. So I think so we would love to hear from her what she is doing despite being consistent to be in top 25. Over to you, Shruti.
Hi Sandeep, really nice hearing you here. I had a question like your LinkedIn is something that I've been following for a really long time, and you're pretty consistent with posting every day. Like now for me, LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter for that matter is just like one of those places where I just went out or wherever I just write when there is something to write, but I'm not consistent with it. So how have you been staying so consistent with posting? Like I would write today and then maybe I would not write for 2 weeks, and maybe if I would write today and maybe I would write 4 posts today in a day. It just depends on how many things come in my mind. So how are you so consistent? How do you form that habit?
So I think it's a God's gift also. And the second is I worked on the gift, but more importantly, I try to wake up at 3 in the morning every day and I write for 5-6 hours every day. So that's what I do. It's part of my life now. I don't know. It just started off, and I continued. So I've never continued anything in my life, as I was saying earlier. But this is the only thing I've done reasonably okay. So for me, it's I write. I put my 10-12 hours a day in this only. So for me, this is
Okay.
my day job. So I do run a company, and we do a lot of work around storytelling also. How do we use story? So we use a lot of storytelling in different areas. So for example, storytelling for marketing, storytelling for sales, storytelling for data, storytelling for employer branding, storytelling for. So we do storytelling in every intervention. But my primary thing is writing stories, and this is my joy. This is like it's like playing music, right? Some people love to play music, and some people, but for me, this is my life. So that's it. I mean, that's all. I mean, yeah, I do push myself. I don't face anything called writer's block. Never. It also comes naturally. I don't have a compulsion that I have to write for something, but it's just natural.
Right.
You don't have to do. I don't do it for the sake of doing it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's it.
All right, perfect. That sounds good.
So it was amazing session, Sandeep. What stays with me is when you say your uniqueness and consistency. Definitely